What is the best comeback that works against all insults? Story 1. Anytime my mom would get called names or insulted, she'd shrug and just say everybody's gotta be something. I like this one actually. I feel like it's the least argumentative comeback here. Deflecting people or responding with a witty thing can just rile them up as they take it the same way as being ignored. This one gives a sort of illusion that you accept what they've said and have already moved on from it. Like, I heard what you said, I've taken it in, and I let it go before the bully really has a chance to process it themselves. I feel like there's still room for reconciliation after this response. It's important to remember the other person in these situations, not because we should be empathetic towards their abusive choices, but because we should be empathetic towards their lead-up emotions. My 5-year-old says mean things sometimes because he hasn't practiced patience and understanding enough. He's learned how to properly react, but he's not mature enough to utilize it properly every time he gets worked up. This is not unexpected of a 5-year-old. A lot of people much older than 5 also are similarly emotionally immature. My husband didn't have much practice with patience before he met me. 10 years later and he's all mellowed out. I'm not perfect, of course, but I am confident in my ability to stay cool in the face of craziness, which helps me remember to think of the other person. When my husband used to get irrationally upset about tiny things and then redirect that upsetness at me, I always considered that he may literally never have had the chance to learn these things before meeting me. He, emotionally, a 5-year-old. I can't expect greatness until he's had the opportunity to learn how to be great in the first place. Although I don't put myself through abuse for the sake of another person's learning experience. If I ever feel unsafe or uncomfortable in an abusive situation, I just leave. That's with my 5-year-old and my husband. I always tell my son, you've got a little body, but huge emotions. So sometimes they spill out a little bit. I don't want you to hurt me and regret it later. As soon as you're done letting those emotions out, I'll come in and hug you. Just yell for me. Then he screams into his pillow or destroys some Lego structures and calls me in to comfort him when he doesn't feel like those emotions are spilling out as much. At the end of his anger outbursts, he always cries in regret for having been angry in the first place. That vulnerability point is where we practice coping mechanisms for his anger. I saw similar emotions in my husband 10 years ago, albeit less obvious. Angry adults are, internally, little 5-year-olds whose emotions are spilling over, and they're scared. Not an excuse, but a shining light onto the anger process in their brains. Not sure where this rant came from today, but here it is. Haha. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Story 2. My husband has a bunch of uncles. One uncle is a real piece of known for screwing everyone over, but the family still protected him and acted like he was okay. Without going into details, the uncle pulled some dirty illegal shit when my husband's dad died. Everyone in the family warned us beforehand he might try to do something. So when he did it, I laid into him telling him we had been warned he would do it. I told him he was no gentleman. He was a liar and a thief who should be ashamed of himself. He left and went outside and started crying. The thing that hurt him was hearing that his family had warned us. I guess he had no idea how they truly felt about him, and being told he wasn't a gentleman was a deep cut. Story 3. Hold a stare and blank face for at least 3 seconds, and then ask in a concerning tone, "Are you okay?" I used this on Reddit a while back. The person whom I asked flipped out. They went through my posts and started replying to everything. I sometimes think about them and honestly wonder if they got help. I reached out via Messenger and said if they needed to talk, I was there for them. They took that even worse. The sad part is I meant it. To me, we were having an academic discussion. To him, I was attacking his manhood, his intellect, and his very way of life. Oddly enough, he kept bringing up molestation. When I explained that I had a PhD in the related field and had several publications on the topic at hand and supplied citations for all my facts, he stated raving about men's rights and no one cares about the little boys who get molested and false rape allegations. That's when I asked if he was okay, and he went from what the f to lunatic. We were originally talking about evolution and milk. Now I delete all my posts after a few months. Especially anything that has personal info. Story 4. Pull my earbuds out with a confused expression and ask what. I've done that before. It worked really well. Then if they repeat it, I just say double quotes yeah ... and oh thanks and put in my earbud again. The fact that the response has no relation to what they just said is dismissive and implies I didn't care enough to even listen properly, and it makes it sound like they just offered me something. It generally confuses them enough that they disengage. If somebody is shouting or angry on the phone to me, I let them run out of steam and then say, sorry, the line cut out and I missed most of that. Could you repeat it? You generally get a confused, slightly less angry and shorter version, and it gives you a bit more time to think up how the f you are going to talk your way out of what stupid you have got yourself into this time. Story 5. Big fan of the pause for a beat, deadpan, and then some variation or combo of you done? Feel better now? Got that out of your system? Just that pause and little bit of patronizing tone while dismissing the childlike behavior usually does more to the ego than a counter insult. I'm a woman and my job basically boils down to arguing with attorneys who are mostly men with huge egos and a large helping of disdain for people they deem beneath them. It's common for them to get pushy, loud, and insulting when they're not getting their way. That was intimidating at first, but now I look forward to it because it gives me an opportunity to use my favorite line. It sounds like you're getting a little emotional about this. Do you want to call me back when you've calmed down so we can get this done? This is always met with a delicious pause, followed by them either hanging up or launching into the most high-pitched screeching you've ever heard. Being called emotional by a woman who is perfectly calm breaks something in them, and it's my favorite thing. Story 6. It was insane. Any woman non-attorney working for them was tasked to be their mom or maid. It was infuriating to see such a caste system in place in current times. They literally would ask you a question and then stop listening halfway through your answer. They'd hire you for one job, only to end up getting another job babysitting the admin. Or the poor intern who just wanted to learn tax law was roped into cooking for the entire office. She was not trained to be a caterer, but was expected to be one. She finally just quit because she was tired of being told food service was now her job. It was an insane place to work, and I think I made it 6 months before I realized working for these people was insane. At one point, I was working on my laptop authorized because we were waiting on my new equipment to show up and I had to bring in my personal computer in the meantime. Story 7. The head partner knew this. His office manager knew this. I had been working about a month on my laptop and no one had an issue with it. One morning this shithead starts screaming at me how using a personal computer was a security risk and how does he even know that I am working on work and not personal stuff. The guy was brilliant at being a lawyer but couldn't remember a conversation from last week. He changed his mind constantly. We'd start a project only to have him abandon or change it completely the next week. It was insane. It opened my eyes to what kind of people lawyers actually are. I think the worst part is commenting on this before. How many people pop up and say how a lot of them are insufferable to work for, like the ones I did. Give them hell. Story 8. I'm an electrical apprentice, and when I first started there was a bit of hazing and teasing from the journeyman. It never got to bad, mostly a lot of talk. One in particular was kinda on me one day, and since he was fairly young I just responded like, did someone treat you like this when you were an apprentice? Do you have some unresolved issues? Do you need a hug? Oddly, he never really responded, but I didn't have any trouble with him anymore. On the same job, the excavator accidentally broke our grounding grid, a big underground copper cable grid used to ground all the structures in the substation. So, I had to jump down, in the rain, into the hole to patch it up. It was wet and muddy, but I was wearing a full rain suit. Another, older, journeyman who was my foreman and had worked for my father more than once made a sarcastic remark along the lines of, "We should take a picture. Wouldn't your daddy be proud?" I just looked up at him and said, well, I'm doing my job, I'm doing it well, and I'm not complaining about it. Yeah, he likely would be proud. I also had another apprentice yell at me, "Stop talking to me like I'm a fucking moron," to which I responded, "Stop talking to me like you're a fucking moron." I did kinda provoke him, but he was being really dense. Story 9. Just laugh out loud. If someone's trying to make you mad, acting like nothing they've said matters to you in the least, and their best attempts at making you feel bad are laughable, will really take the wind out of their sails. I've done it. It's immensely satisfying. I once got punched in the face by a guy who had started trying to bully me in 7th grade. I don't know why, but I just started laughing that uncontrollable. This isn't funny and it's not appropriate to laugh right now, but there's no way to stop it type laugh. It wasn't intentional and I wasn't trying to freak the guy out, but he turned beet red, mumbled that I was a psycho, and stalked away. He wouldn't even make eye contact with me through the end of high school, so that worked out well. Story 10. Tangentially, I had a friend get out of a potential bar fight by flipping out and saying, "Why do you want to see my nuts so bad?" The drunk guy trying to pick a fight was still ready to throw punches, so my friend unzipped his fly, hung one nut out and said, "There. Are you happy? Can I leave now?" The drunk guy just stood there confused as my friend walked off. You gotta out crazy the crazies. Once a homeless man walked up to me and my ex and was screaming. I watched my then boyfriend sink into his seat on the bench as my instinct was to stand up and start scream dancing along with the man approaching. Slap. Butt wiggle bitch. I don't know how, but it worked. He kind of veered away from us and walked right by. His screaming subsided to whispering, and my ex looked equally terrified and in awe. Story 11. You want my comeback? You'd have to wipe it off your mom's teeth, Jimmy Carr. Back when I was homeschooled, I got a job at around 16. I was only around super religious folk and wasn't versed in the real world at all. I somehow got into the situation where I said I don't have a comeback, and one of the guys said if I wanted my comeback, I'd tell you to spit. I was very confused and asked him to explain what he meant. He started to, then decided it wasn't worth it and said never mind. I didn't realize what he meant until I went to public high school later. Story 12. The anti-comeback is my favorite. A light breeze has more effect on me than someone insulting or bullying me these days. I couldn't tell you what the last 5 or 10 people in my life that tried to publicly humiliate me even looked like. I never looked at them. What they were saying never made me miss a beat in whatever I was doing. They get so mad every time, try to bait me a few times, and then eventually give up. Meanwhile, everyone around me can hear and see what's happening. There's only one person that everyone is witnessing making an ass of themselves, and it's not me. This, the no reaction, is the best reaction. I don't even entertain shit talkers, and if anything, let them have their moment, as it gives a decent perspective as to where their heads are at. I moved into a new neighborhood a few years back and have no idea what I did to get on one of my neighbor's bad sides. I've moved every 18 months of my life since birth and lived all over the world, and it wasn't until almost 40 that I came across the most vile and disturbed neighbor I've ever had. Shortly after moving in, I got invited to a little get-together, and dude was projecting for almost an hour straight, giggling and laughing his ass off the whole time, trying to get a rise out of me. He had spent some time looking me up online and was boasting about things he had found. I'm a former celebrity overseas and my life is an open book and have had a few stalkers in the past. This guy took the prize for the most obsessed and weirdest interaction I've ever had when first meeting someone, let alone a new neighbor. Thanks to them, I cleaned up my online presence, as I am no longer famous was a long time ago and don't bother with people younger than me anymore. We would have neighborhood watch meetings and the guy or his boyfriend would make snide remarks about my son's attire. I never gave them the time of day and everyone could see them festering from their weird obsession with being so negative. I'm a pretty self-aware dude and know if I'm committing a social faux pas. This dude apparently isn't. Let them keep talking without engaging and it will speak volumes about them versus whatever it is they're accusing or bullying you for. In weirdos. Story 13. I had an encounter on a flight recently where some women behind me were making fun of me and filming me to post online. I guess they were looking for one of those freak out moments to post online and go viral, because they kept indirectly saying things about me, hoping that I would overheat and react while the camera was rolling. Once I overheard what was going on, I stopped moving or doing literally anything, and they whined the rest of the flight about having to delete the video because it was useless. I think they still posted something, but I won't put in any effort to find it. I was angry about getting off the plane, but I later felt satisfied that I don't let that kind of behavior get to me. My dad said when I was really young and had my first instance of bullying, just ignore them. Sounded ridiculous at the time. 100% correct now. Story 14. Who hurt you? I've said this before and it's like they hit a brick wall. It's all about timing and delivery. I'm pretty thick-skinned when it comes to insults, but this has stopped some really nasty people in their tracks. The art of war, the most brutal strike, is often holding up a mirror to your enemy. In this case, self-reflection. At the very least, it's non-aggressive and unexpected, throwing their momentum off kilter. I usually end with "have the day you deserve" as the final amuse bouch.